Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order the October 15th Planning and Zoning Commission for the City of Sebastian, Florida. First order of business will be, please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. On the roll call, Janet Graham, our technical writer, is with us via Zoom, and also Barbara Brooke Reese is our MIS coordinator that organizes the Zoom. So if you are planning on calling in tonight, you'll be communicating with Barbara, and then she will set you up and give you tips as far as your queue. So the first order of business then is roll call. Janet, would you please proceed?
Yes. Mr. Roth?
Here.
Mr. Simmons?
Present.
Ms. Cottenberg?
Here.
Mr. Cristino?
Here.
Mr. Kizelbosch?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. In the announcements regarding commissioners, there are several that have excused absences this evening. Mr. Hugan, Mr. Carter, Mr. Alvarez, and Mr. Reyes are all excused from the meeting this evening. In the two commissioners' places who are members, Mr. Cristino and Mrs. Kautenberg will be voting in their place tonight. Do any of the commissioners have any things they would like added to the agenda for tonight? If so, now would be the time to do so. I don't anticipate any. Okay, moving forward then, the next order of business would be the approval of minutes from the regular meeting we held on September 17th, 2020 in these chambers. They were included with our packet that we received almost 2 weeks ago. And I really appreciate getting it that far ahead with all of the details we had to go over. Do any of the commissioners have any changes or corrections to the minutes that were submitted for September 17th?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the 17th.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion by Mr. Simmons, second by Mr. Cristino. I think we can proceed with a voice vote. All those in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye. I'll vote aye. And opposed? Silent. So the minutes are approved as submitted unanimously.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
This is City Attorney. I just want to make sure you guys are aware that I'm by Zoom, okay?
Thank you for calling in or being present for us. We always need your wise counsel, and as you did this time, please feel free to interject, and if necessary, keep talking to get our attention. I will try to pay attention, and I'm sure Barbara will too on the Zoom to make sure that we stay on track, and we need your counsel and advice all the way through tonight.
I'll be here. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. We have tonight a public hearing on a project that we've been working on for quite some time, and that's our plan for the city of Sebastian, the 2020 plan that looks forward to the future. And I just want to preface it by a couple of comments. I really want to compliment the plan staff for their detailed work in finding a company like Kimberly Horn to help us out with this project and all of the detail that went into this. I was very impressed with the amount of historical data that was included that helped in preparing this document. This is actually the third comprehensive plan I've been involved with, the second one here and another one in Mishawaka, Indiana. But this is by far the best and the most detailed. So with that, I need to pass on a compliment to both our staff and Kimberly Horn for doing such an incredibly detailed and comprehensive project for us. It meant a lot of reading, but all the data is there for us. At this point, I would like to have staff introduce the project, and also we will have a public hearing on it as well.
Mr. Chair, I believe the attorney, since it is a public hearing, the attorney should read read the title of the public hearing.
That's correct. Could we have the project introduced by our city attorney?
Is that 6A?
Yes.
Okay, public hearing, recommendation to City Council, City of Sebastian Comprehensive Plan 2040, final draft. Revised elements include land use, transportation and mobility, housing, infrastructure, conservation and coastal management, parks, recreation, open space, governance and implementation, and public schools.
Thank you. At this time, then, I'd like to recognize the plan staff for their presentation on this, and also representatives from Kimberly Horn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're very excited to be here at this point. Boy, the sun's right in my eyes here. To be here at this point with you all. And again, thank you for your compliments, Mr. Chair, but I really want to compliment all of you and the other bodies of public input that have provided us with such great changes and needs in the community and goals in the community that we were able to incorporate into this plan. The Parks and Recreation Board, the Natural Resource Board, and of course, you, the PZ Commission, sitting as the LPA, and we truly appreciate you helping us get to this point. We still have a few more steps to go, but we're very excited that we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Now, having said that, I just want to make sure that you all understand what's in front of you this evening. Attachment 1, the way we decided to be able to really clearly show you how your comments were incorporated was through these meeting minutes. Okay, so when we highlighted, and then had comments on the side directing you to where you would find those changes or how those comments were addressed in the revised plan, because as you all remember, this is only incorporating the comments from your final look at it, and then this is your everything brought back together, okay? So we tried to make it as simple as possible. I hope it helped. I know it was challenging to put together this, but we felt it was probably the best way to make sure that you all recognize your comments were heard and incorporated. Okay, and of course, you all received the entire book. I'm sure it was interesting reading for all of you after all these months of going back and forth. And then third is your matrices. And we have confirmation from the DEO that they're going to accept this, because really, for all intensive purposes, we've taken the old comp plan and struck the whole thing, because we've really reorganized it so much and slimmed it down and really made it into a working document, which was our desire from the very beginning. And so thank you, Kimley Horn, for saying and doing this in other cities, and DEO is fine with it. The matrices leads us from where that change was, or where that original document or language was and where it is today, or how it is no longer needed, or it was a repeat, if you recall all of that. So this all will go back up to DEO, okay? So in addition to that, this evening, in front of you is just a sheet of paper here, which I do need you all to recognize and review and consider this evening. The Natural Resource Board, at their October 6th meeting, they had requested that they get one more look-see at the conservation and coastal management element, which they have been very instrumental in assisting us in really making it a really great representation of this community's desire to protect their natural environment. So with that, this is a summation of where we put some of their recommended changes. All the red is where I have not incorporated it into the element as of yet, because this was just October 6th that we had this meeting. However, this evening, if you are in agreement with these changes being incorporated, then I will need that stated in your recommendation to the City Council, okay? That you accept these changes, looks good to you, make those changes and move it on with the rest of the elements, okay? Did that make sense? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Can we ask questions about, when we get to it, can we ask questions about
Oh,
these things?
absolutely,
Okay,
absolutely. I'm
thank
just
you.
giving you my presentation.
Okay, thank you.
And then, in addition, there are several land use changes that were being considered. If you recall, there's 2 areas in the city that we are recommending being changed to mixed-use land use. One being, and we sent out our public notices to all of these landowners, okay? And this evening, you're going to see in the PowerPoint that the airport has now asked that a piece of airport property be also changed from institutional to mixed use, and that's along Airport East Drive where the pickleball court is, okay? So that's stripped there. It was always supposed to be for commercial development, and yet it has always been land used and zoned as institutional. So now would be the time to change the land use, and we'll change the zoning later on.
Do we have anything on that right now in front of us?
You will have that, it's in the PowerPoint. I'll just show you
okay.
the graphic of it, and then again, when you make your recommendation up to the City Council, I'll ask that you include that if you so desire. Now, we sent public notices out to the individual property owners who we are suggesting we change their land use, not their zoning, their land use to mixed use, particularly the triangle area, and we can get into the nuts and bolts of that now or later on. But in the triangle area, it has a lot of different, they have, exactly, they have public service, they have commercial, they have industrial, and what you'll have to go back to is the overlay, the triangle overlay, which gives the uses that are allowed there, the permitted uses, and nothing will have changed by this land use change, because our mixed use land use incorporates all of those uses, okay? However, we do have a member in our audience this evening, and possibly people on Zoom, I do not know, who will want to discuss that. And in a favorable way, but we want to discuss that with these property owners and make sure that they're comfortable with this change before we send anything up. So those are some of the major highlights I wanted to make sure this commission recognizes as we move forward with the presentation. And if you so desire, we'll just have Kelly go through the whole presentation, or you can stop them in between and ask questions, or wait till the end. It's up to you all. Kelly's easy. Oh, God, I can't even look at you.
I know that sun's got you there. So Lisa, just to clarify quickly, you stated that we're going to be changing the use on the 2 parcels, one being at the airport, the strip of land there, and the other focus is in the triangle.
Correct,
And that's it.
no, if you look at your future land use map, it's always been on there. It's
Yes.
Fisher's Lake property. Fishers have come in and specifically asked that we change that to mixed use also. They have industrial and
Along Schuman, that property?
99th, their big sand pit off of 99th Avenue.
Okay.
Oh, I see that one.
Yes,
he's got
and
another
it's
mining
been on your
operation.
future land use map for a while. I don't know where my map went. But they have also, of course, been informed, but they're the ones who came in and discussed it with us. So I'm pretty sure they're comfortable. So, okay. So with that, I'll have Kelly do his presentation. And again, commissioners, if you want to interrupt him throughout, that's fine, or wait until the end. I mean, again, whatever your pleasure is. Okay, Mr. Chair?
I think rather than save them, the questions, it'd be better to clear the point up right then at that point.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, and if we get too far into the field, then you can stop us, Kelly, and say that's going to be covered later.
Absolutely. Yeah, and Mr. Roth, I will say definitely. Yeah, I'm on. I do want to say that, I was going to suggest that we do the questions by section. That way it's still fresh on everybody's mind. It'll be a little bit easier for the overall discussion. So for the record, Kelly Klepper with Kimley Horn Associates, and I do want to echo what Lisa said, and appreciate the kind words and the recognition of the work that has gone into this comprehensive plan. And there's 2 words when you start looking at the introduction that really kind of stand out, and it's the reason we pulled them out in bold. It's working together, and there's a reason that the plan is where it is, because we, as a team, and I call us a team because we have worked together very closely to make, some pretty significant changes in the city's comprehensive plan moving forward. So it's not just my plan or Kimley Horn's plan. This is the city's plan, so appreciate that. And I know the city attorney's on, so Mr. City Attorney, if you've also got questions along the way, by all means, please feel free to ask. So, clicker. So what we're going to do is kind of walk through each of the elements. As Lisa said, we're going to focus in on what has changed over the course of the last 3 to 4 workshops, plus the comments that you provided along the way. However, feel free to ask specific questions as far as something else that's in there. We do have the great big books. But tonight's presentation is kind of that, just getting through those components so that you can understand exactly what's changed and why. On the screen, it actually identifies the elements as we've identified them per the comprehensive plan, including all the way from the introduction, the acronyms and definitions, and all the way through the 8 required elements. Now, one thing we want to point out is you actually have a 9th element that is not being discussed or is not amended as part of this comprehensive plan update. Because it's an optional element, it's not required to be brought forward, discussed. So the city has an existing economic development element that will continue to stand on its own. If you want to modify or do something with that, you'll go through a similar type of process after this initial comprehensive plan review and update. So just a high level, what we did is, since the last time, is actually provide, an acknowledgments page. We want to make sure that we identify everybody that's participated in this, whether it's this body, the city council, staff, the various bodies and boards. The other thing that we wanted to make sure to identify is, the livability components that were brought out from a workshop early on. So you'll see actually early on in the comprehensive plan that there's that livability diagram that starts to kind of bring all those key words that were brought out as part of the workshop. The other thing, of course, and I think Mr. Roth and a couple of the other commissioners were very keen on this, is making sure we had clear, concise acronyms and definitions right up front. So that, that's setting the stage so that you don't have to kind of look in, is it the back, is the middle, is it each section? It's right up there in the front, so you can kind of continue to flip back and forth with those items. There again, trying to make it clear, concise, and easy to follow, including in those components at the very beginning of the document. From a land use perspective, a couple of quick changes, or I'll say clarifications that we made. There was some discussion with respect to the amount of density that's being proposed within the medium and the mixed-use designations. And you can see based off of the recommendations that we had from the previous meetings, and this also kind of gets to that missing middle, that living community standard component, is ensuring that we are providing density to support those initiatives. And that gets back to there again, the affordable housing components of what we're talking about. We did also do the clarification, because I know there was some question as far as, are we allowing for increased densities of the riverfront mixed use within the coastal high hazard? The understanding is, of course, no, we're not, but we wanted to make sure that was very clear so that it was not a gray area that Lisa and the city attorney would have to try to make opinions on after the fact. So we clarified that to show that it's clearly a designation where, increases in density can only be in those areas outside the coastal high hazard. Clarification with respect to industrial, especially as it relates to limited or light industrial, and also identifying that in your upcoming LDC, your land development code, you're going to need to define and provide those characteristics of what is heavy and or light, because that's where it actually needs to be, those performance standards in the city's land development code. And then also, since we did get the latest and greatest Bieber estimates that were certified as of the last meeting, we were able to incorporate those into our carrying capacity analysis moving forward so that we have enough density and intensity to support the future growth based off of the current certified Bieber population estimates. And also keeping in mind that what we're talking about here, of course, is consistent with, and I know there was a question that came up, is consistent with and keeping in concert with the county's land use standards, so those properties immediately adjacent, so we're consistent from that aspect. And this is also consistent with those comments that were received from the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity and Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council based off of previous comprehensive plan amendments. As far as the land use map, and Lisa, feel free to kind of chime in on that, because I did kind of jump ahead with those comments, but just identifying there again that, this is consistent across the board. And I know we do need to make the one modification if that is the desire of this. That one. Yeah, I was waiting for the timer to kick in and it wasn't clicking in. Of course, subject to this body's positive recommendation, the future land use map for the property that you see in the lower left-hand side of your screen would be redesignated from institutional to mixed use. So that change would be identified in the acreages, especially within our data inventory and analysis, would be updated as well. And then lastly, there was a question or comment that came up from a couple of members of this body that said, what about a property maintenance policy? So we wanted to make it very, very clear right in the body of the land use, and this also equates back to the housing element, that there is a policy regarding property maintenance. And you can read, I'm not going to read all of the language there, but it's setting up the process for the land development code, which there again, that's where these standards need to be for property maintenance, whether it's residential, commercial, or anything else at that point, so that you do have those property aesthetic standards. There's quality development and redevelopment. There's ongoing property maintenance for all properties within the city. So this is giving you that legal basis to put it into and further it in your land development code. And I'm going to stop there because that's the highlights from the land use element.
This is well prepared. My only concern is most of the maps are not readable. Is there any way we could bright these things, all the maps? They are so dim, So it's difficult to read. So is there any way we could do something to make it a little bright so it could clear?
We can actually do a couple different things, and one
And
is...
some maps are good, but some of the so dim, you
You
cannot.
can't read them.
Yeah, absolutely, and we
Yeah.
will go back and just double check, I'll say, the quality to make sure it's not like a cut to cut to cut.
Yeah.
It's a first cut into it.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Even some of the legend on the maps, they are not readable too, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, some of them, you've got several maps
Yeah.
on one page. Perhaps you could just do a single map on a page, enlarge it, and be a little easier to read.
Yeah.
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, and we'll go back and look at all of those.
Otherwise, it's been very nicely prepared, so.
Worst case, if we have to go to 11 by 17, we'll go to 11 by 17.
Yeah, the folded there, yeah.
Absolutely.
Before, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
and that's an easy...
Are those the maps on page 40 and 41? Or in section 1?
I mean, all over the plan, all over the books.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
Some are crowded.
yeah.
yeah. I admit, if this is going to be a working document, it might be better, and I know there's several of them, but I know you can print back-to-back on an 11 by 17, which would be a fold-out page. I would tend to agree with that. I mean, if we're going to refer back to it, because this, otherwise you look at this and it gives you the broad picture, but you can't really make any decisions based on this. You'd have to go find another map somewhere else.
Yeah, now, and two things to kind of keep in mind along those lines. The maps are actually sized for, I think it's 36 by 48 at the end of the day. But there's also the GIS layers for all of these maps that Lisa and her staff now also have. So we have the ability to mix and match sizes for legibility or whatever. So, but yeah, 11 by 17 will definitely work, especially with the orientation of these maps.
If you did that, it would be turned at 90 degrees.
Yeah, that would be the only drawback or negative, is you're going to have to kind of keep flipping back and forth the book. But the other aspect of this is that you keep the maps loose and have them as a separate component of the comprehensive plan, so that as you're flipping through the land use, you're going to have the map separate and just sitting right there with you.
And where I've also seen is that exactly what Kelly's saying, all of the maps from element 1, all of them from element 2, all of them, instead of being in the back of the element, where you could still have them, but you actually have the larger version in a map set. We could do that. That may be a better way to go.
Are we driving up the cost too much by doing that?
No, I mean, most of this, and the thing is, it could actually reduce the cost, because the written version can be in black and white.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be in color, and then you just have the maps in color, the map section in color. It's a thought. We can bring that that's not anything that you all have to determine tonight. It's not part of your recommendation, but that's definitely something we can work on. Mm-hmm. And then when we have these workshops, we could actually have them out for you to say yay or nay.
I think that would be very helpful, because otherwise you have to travel with a very large magnifying glass.
Which I have in my top drawer.
I have one sitting right next to my chair.
Mr. Roth, that's not going to push up the cost. It's literally the push of two buttons on a computer. That's all it is.
So what we're looking at then is envisioning the plan as it is, but perhaps, they could stay in color, but then a larger addendum that would include all of the maps, and then you would have to refer to on the bottom of, for example, on page, the first map is on page 40 in the first section, land use. you'd have to refer on the bottom of their addendum page, so-and-so.
Or we would just say map series, and it's part of the whole document, but it's just maybe in the back or maybe even in the front, and it's the 11 by 17s.
Well, I don't want to go too far
Right.
afield here on this,
Right.
but I think the idea is great.
Yeah.
I think we need to let you solve how we do it.
We've seen it in other places.
And come up with, you know, some method of whether it's a totally separate bound, which is still 8.5 by 11, but folded, to make it easier to keep it with this. But you understand what we're looking for, and so we'll let the experts come up with
No,
how they do it.
Yeah, if you make a separate binder, then it's confusion, you should go back and forth.
Yeah.
You just make 11 by 17 size, and it's a little more ink there, right, that'd be fine.
Yeah, and Mr. Roth, one of the things that we do intentionally is if you notice the way that the comprehensive plan is laid out, there's chapter 1. Everything in that is policy or goal objective policy 1, and the maps are all start with a 1. Chapter 2 is transportation mobility, so you always know those maps are tied to that specific chapter and element as well.
Yes, okay.
It's a quick, easy cheat we picked up a long time ago.
See, you're way ahead of us on that, thank you.
No, but those are great comments. Absolutely.
Well, that's great. You understand then, and the concept is there, and I think that's something that needs to go with our recommendation to City Council, that we have a map addendum, or whatever we want to call it, that would have that with it as part of the whole plan. Another first, but it would make it much, much better. I don't know if it was who it was that brought it up, but having a larger map, Mr. Quiselbosch or Mr. Christino, one or the other, but it came from this side. So, yes, let's move forward with it.
Okay.
Any other questions then of Kelly on the land use portion?
I do have excuse me, a couple of questions, but they're not necessarily to the presentation per se, but it has to do with 1.123, the medium density development and the transfer of development rights. That's just 1-1.5. And the question is to Lisa Odori, the transfer rights, are those subjective or objective? Or in other words, if I have an extra acre of open space or whatever, I'm entitled to so many transfer rights. I guess, is there actually a formula, or is it just through negotiation?
That's a very nice question, and it's something we keep discussing. We do not have that in your comp plan. It says we are going to consider transfer of development rights, and that the city shall formulate a policy regarding transfer of development rights. So we do not have anything in writing as of yet. So with the acceptance of the comp plan, it's not going to be available to you until we actually get an ordinance or a policy in place. But with the transfer of development rights, there's many different ways that you can slice this cake, but what we're considering is that the piece of property that you have development rights on, that you don't want to develop or cannot develop for whatever reason, it's landlocked, it's too small for whatever your purpose is, you can transfer those density rights to a larger piece of property, let's say, or a smaller piece of property, whatever your druthers are, whatever your development desire, those development rights then go to your property to be developed and added on. So if you have 6 units per acre and you transfer over, I don't know, so now you're at 7 units per acre. I'm just making all of this up. The property you transferred it from cannot be developed. You have now given up those development rights, and you transfer it to some place else in the city. Now, we really want to make sure that it's city lot to city lot. a lot of our concept of this came from when we were doing the coastal resiliency plan, and this commission asked us before even the coastal resiliency plan to consider the small lots over on the river, on either the Indian River Lagoon or on the St. Sebastian River, mainly on the Indian River Lagoon. But what can we do with them? How can we protect it? They're in a coastal high hazard area. If the property owner desires, they can take the development rights from that developable lot and transfer it someplace else in the city or even across the street to, which a lot of them do own those lots there. So that was where that concept came from. I probably went along too long here, Mr. Simmons, I apologize, but did that answer your?
Yeah, because if you go to the other, the land development, or what is it, 54, you don't find a whole lot.
There are no transfer of development rights in our ordinances today.
So, all right, this is yet to come.
That is correct, sir. We have a lot of work ahead of us.
Yeah, we have to get busy on that.
We have a lot. Don't worry, Dory and I and Robert sit there and go, whew, we got a lot of work ahead of us.
Because you'll probably get this question again, because I know you got at least 2 more workshops and a presentation to council and so forth, because it looks like you're shooting for January or whatever.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And Mr. Simmons, at least if I could just add, because we're actually, I've established TDR programs in a number of locations. I'm happy to provide Lisa some baseline things to be looking and talking and thinking about. And you know, the TDR program is going to be exactly what you want it to be. It could be a 1-for-1. You can incentivize if it's for qualified affordable housing. You could do a couple of different things, but you're going to have to identify and target what we call sending zones and receiving zones. So it's not open season on all transfers, and then there's the mechanism like a restrictive covenant that gets recorded so that, you know, those development rights have been transferred from parcel A to parcel B, and that's all there is at that point.
And I understand the concept of it. I've been through it before in Denver, Colorado, for example. But anyhow, thanks.
Anything else, commissioners? Mr. Simmons, you brought up that question, and it was one that answered one I had about what's called the FAR, or the floor area ratio, because it plays into that as well.
Yes, it does, because you go from 10 to 12, I mean, as far as the units and so forth.
Yeah.
But it's tied to.
It's really neat, though, that this plan is looking to the future. When you stop and think of it, that's where we're at.
Yeah.
There's so many parts of this plan, and Kelly and his staff came up with that along with Lisa and our staff here. So it's in here, so we're looking to the future. It's great. Okay, let's move on then, if the commission is okay to
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Next section, transportation.
Joe,
Yes.
I had a quick question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. It was on the your numbers concerning persons per unit, housing unit. We had discussed that prior. We had conflicting numbers. You came in at 2.24. And I believe we were at 2.42. On other documents, no, I'm not finished. I did a little more research over the last week. The number's actually closer in reality to 2.65. That's based on census numbers. That's how many people live in a house on the average in the city. I'm just afraid that we're qualifying more homes than we possibly need by bringing those numbers down. It seems the trend is to fit more people in a house with the cost of housing going up, not fewer.
Well,
so are we rationalizing, say, another 500 housing units in the city based on numbers that are not accurate?
With all due respect, and I was going to ask what specific source, Mr. Cristino. Here's the other thing to think about. State law says we have to make sure we're applying the standard to hit the minimum. They used to have the maximum cap, so you know it was like, hey, you've got enough population, you can only do 500. Now it's that. What we're seeing is, and this is occurring a lot more, are the persons per household numbers are coming down because of an older generation and the number of people. Like we're seeing, Florida's seeing a lot more trend of this in a lot of cases. Based off of what we were looking at, whether it's through the census, the ACS, as well as Bieber, there again, we were identifying 224 based off of that. So, yeah, but I mean, if it's 265, then we can go back through and we can revise it.
All right, thank you.
There's also an element involved in our city is the sewerage system. As long as we have septic system, okay, the housing number will always stay low, 2.5 or 2.6 per house based on the septic system. So it cannot go up nowhere till we get a sewerage system, you know.
We reference it, but yeah.
So we come to a resolution on that then? How we want to move forward?
I guess I'm all set with it. It's a number you're going to stick with to explain the reason for using it.
All right. We're happy to go back and confirm exactly. If you could get with Lisa and just identify what the specific source you're looking at so that we've got this, we'll look at it the same thing, then absolutely.
Where is that reference? I didn't paperclip that page.
Sir, it's on page 31, correct? It's the build-out analysis.
Correct.
And for Beaver and the census, it states that there's 2.24 people per dwelling unit. And Mr. Cristino has been concerned about it, and rightfully so, that if you have too low a number, do we need, you know, more housing to accommodate that when maybe there's more people in a house than we anticipate. So definitely we'll recheck that data once again and, you know, make sure that it is on target.
Just for Mr. Klepper, we're also seeing a trend of one child typically moving in with the parents today, which actually bumps that number upwards. They're taking one along the way that doesn't have their own house, and they're going to inherit the house. In the meantime, they take care of things for their parents. So I think that trend is actually going upwards.
The good thing is we will have some really good, solid data coming out in about 4 to 6 months.
Yeah.
So
Maybe too late for this plan.
if we could have held off a little bit longer, Lisa. Yeah.
And what was your number that you'd come up with was 2 point?
Well, the old numbers that we
Right.
referred to were 2.42. The new number, I believe, is at 2.24. And I came up with a census figure of 2.65.
That was a 2 point.
And our rentals are still on the higher side. This is a owner's number of persons per dwelling or owners. Our rental numbers were 3.09, I believe. Mr. Klepper?
You jumped ahead to housing, Mr. Cristino, as far as the rental numbers?
3.09 was the last in memory.
And what are you referencing, sir? What page? Or is the data from the
Right,
housing?
that's on the old comp plan. I don't have the page number for you, I apologize.
But when you're talking about renters, I believe that we're in the housing
You have
element
persons per
then.
unit. In other words, we had two sets of numbers, apparently one for owners, one for renters for some,
Correct, and that's in the housing element.
okay, in
Okay.
the housing element there.
Okay.
So we're getting ahead of
Can we wait to
ourselves.
discuss that until we get there?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Keep your
Just
question hot.
remind me in case I forget. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We will be there very quickly.
Okay, we're ready to move forward then with transportation?
Okay, Mr. Roth, Commissioners, based off of the comments that we received, we did want to make sure that everybody understood that we did add some additional policies and some additional language specific to complete streets and what those specific elements are. Those, of course, will be further defined and refined within your land development code and/or a technical manual, but this way everybody kind of starts to understand these are all of the things that are in play to be considered a complete street. The other thing that we heard loud and clear was making sure that we are continuing to coordinate with the county, especially as it relates to bicycle pedestrian infrastructure along County Road 512. And then one of the other primary components was just making sure that the land development code is going to be reviewed and updated with respect to parking standards, not just for vehicles, but for all modes. And I know, Mr. Cristino, we were talking a little bit about for boat parking, which we actually did incorporate under some of the land use, but mostly within the parks and recreation components as well. But that would also fall under those parking standards. So those items have been added in at this point. The other thing that was requested, and we did go back and verify with our transportation engineer, Mr. Kerr, is there was a question regarding the level of service for sidewalks and multi-use paths throughout the city. The Florida Department of Transportation actually has a manual that we've cited that provides the city the guidance to establish those various levels of service for the non-vehicular components, so sidewalks, pathways, and those components. So that is now embedded in your comprehensive plan, so you'll be able to, there again, either technical manual or land development code, adopt specific and additional standards for that.
I did notice that, thank you. I specifically went and made sure that was included. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
On a note to our prior conversation, you had made a remark, the wider the roads, the faster the speeds, and you're 100% correct. I had done some further research on that. My feeling on widening the roads, if it's a dedicated, delineated bike lane, it possibly wouldn't have that effect. We keep the roads the same width for cars. We just add that 3 or 4 feet, according to Mr. Carlisle, dedicated strictly for a bicycle. We don't want to increase vehicle speeds because then your accident or collision ratio goes up.
Yeah.
We don't want to see people getting hit and thinking we've got a highway there.
Yeah, and Mr. Cristino, the one thing, and this is something we always kind of try to talk about, especially, lane widths and everything else, making sure it's context specific for the area that we're talking about. Some places will go with a 9-foot driving lane. In a community like this, that's not wise. But at the same time, you don't want to go we'll say 14 feet. So yeah, that becomes, what is that right size for this? I know you were using the example with the boats and some of the larger vehicles, making sure that we can accommodate those safely. And at the same time, like you were saying, adding those dedicated bike lanes as well. So it's not a shared pathways or shared roadway system. So absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
If I can add something really quick. City Attorney? Can you hear me?
What is it?
Oh.
Can you hear me, City Attorney?
That's good.
Yes,
Hey.
they can hear you.
Okay, I was just gonna say, when you make references to something like that, like the FWD manual, I would just put something like comma and as amended, because those things are amended periodically, and now we don't have to worry about any subsequent amendments.
Yes, sir, and just to address the city attorney's comments, it does say it gives the specific name of the document, comma, as amended. Yes, sir.
It's there? I didn't see it. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I apologize.
Nope, not a problem. That's a great comment. That's something that definitely when you're reading this, make sure if we're referencing a specific document that you see as amended.
Yep.
And
Okay.
that goes for any document references.
Good. So we're up to speed on that. Good. So, on any further comments on the transportation section?
I have just one. Lisa and I had discussed the potential for a type of a shuttle bus, something along Indian River Drive, perhaps seasonally, for those that stay in the hotels along Indian River Drive. And we do have a Best Western over there on Route 1. But I believe it would ease the congestion, it would add charm to the city. Could be a natural gas-powered vehicle, something that's clean operating. Could either be supported by the businesses along Indian River Drive, the various restaurants. They would get a stop in exchange for a contribution towards its operation. It's just a possibility of getting some of the traffic. We get a lot of different types of traffic on Indian River Drive in the season. There's golf carts, there's bikes, there's walkers, there's people with dogs, and we've got cars. Mm-hmm. And we get a lot of people that tend to participate in the offerings of the various bars and restaurants along Indian River Drive, so a little public transportation wouldn't be a bad thing to look at in the future. That's it.
You're talking about, it's something that I thought about quite a long time ago and kind of dropped because the initiative wasn't there at that point to, focus more on developing something in that area. And we didn't have the plan or the trails marked out, the historic walking trail, or maybe not historic, but a walking trail with markers. So that, I think, all fits together. You're thinking about perhaps a tram or a trolley type transportation.
Right. It wouldn't be something like when you go to Key West. Key West done an exceptional job with public transportation down there. And there's a necessity in that once you find a parking spot, you don't leave it down there. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it.
Oh, yeah.
But the bus route covers all of the tourist attractions throughout the city. Over there, it does a great job, gets you to the beach, gets you down to the southernmost part, et cetera. And it's free. It's free. And I'm assuming that the businesses that are in the city participate in supporting that.
I don't know if we're at that point, but I think it might bear a mention.
May I bring you to your attention to policy 2-1.1.3? It's on page 5. And it talks about prioritizing. So we talk about prioritizing mobility with consideration to sustainability, environmental, social accessibility, and equity factors using the following hierarchy, I cannot even speak, as a guidance for prioritizing projects based on transportation mode. So basically what this policy is saying is that, we can consider these types of modes of transportation as alternatives, I think is what you're even alluding to, that we need to have that freedom to consider, depending on the node, depending on the mode, depending on, the public availability or the private incentives. And I think this covers it. I may be interpreting it incorrectly, but
I think it's in here. I mean, I'm looking, bus shelters is another possibility for the city to add. Where,
taxi, car sharing, private transit, registered low speed vehicles, my favorite.
Single occupancy.
So I think that gives us a little bit of that door opening, or provides us with that door opening so we can consider those things, but certainly we can bolster it with more verbiage if you feel it's necessary.
I think there's also an option for a private business that might offer at particular times, weekends, holidays, which would take, there are places where that is done, a tram sort of vehicle, and it's just a private business that takes people on a loop. And
I've seen Oyster Bay. I believe they have access to the golf carts. People that stay over there at the timeshare across from Hiram's. Mm-hmm. But they're more of a hazard.
I'm not thinking about golf carts racing back and forth across the road. I'm thinking about
a nice bus type, something with a guided tour.
I'm thinking of Disney's tram.
Right along that.
It would travel a regular route, and it would be a private business that might operate that sort of thing.
It could be subsidized by the businesses. They got to stop at Hiram's, let Hiram's chip in.
Or not.
Right, or not.
Or not.
You know, you want to stop along the Great Railway, you know, and you and I have something else to do when you decide to stop selling houses, and I'm not going to hit
Jump
nails
off, jump
anymore.
on.
We'll be tooting the horn, and
May I also bring your
I don't want to
attention
get
to...
off track.
I'm so sorry, Mr.
Okay.
Bring your attention to policy 2-1.1.17, public transit. That does talk about, you know, with partners, appropriate partners, evaluate the need for additional public transit routes. So it also provides you, again, with that door to do that. There's nothing in here that is preventing this from happening, is what I want to point out to you. So if it's not specifically mentioned, at least there's nothing in here preventing that, you know, what's going to happen in the next 20 years. We don't know.
We don't know.
We have no idea. Everything could be solar, battery. We could be all walking. I don't know. Maybe we're all flying. I don't know. So there's nothing in there that prevents us from utilizing this new technology. So thank you for supporting that.
I need clarification on this table, page 23. It's a roadway and their primary use, land use. On page 23 is Russell Avenue. It's a small street, and it's a general commercial.
Yeah, that's all houses.
So is that a typo error or just there? Russell Avenue?
Louisiana Avenue, I think there is.
No.
No, Vosel is off of Barber.
Russell Avenue from Fleming to all the way to
Vosel
Roseland?
Avenue.
Yeah.
I don't know that street. Dory, you want to chime
Oh,
in?
we know it.
Page 23, it's a GC, general commercial land use, that's right?
No, Yeah.
I need a correction there.
that's low density over there. We get a lot of complaints from people over there. Traffic is speeding along.
So we need correction on that one. So. That's it, yeah.
So are we clear on that update then, on page 23?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else from the commissioners?
I don't have anything in transportation.
Okay. Then we'll, let's see, none of the other things that we have.
I just wanted, I'm sure everyone picked up that you eliminated 1.8 concerning the airport and went over to, I believe it's 2.2, 2.3. You consolidated it, is all you did. In the old comp plan, the airport was referenced in section 1, -8 on there, which is fine. You didn't eliminate anything, you just switched the location and consolidated.
Correct.
So I noticed that.
Oh, yes, that's correct.
That's it.
Okay. Move to the next section in the plan, which would be housing.
Okay, this one we definitely heard loud and clear with regards to that missing middle and some of that housing shortage. So what we wanted to do was to make sure that you all saw that we did add policies regarding additional opportunities and methods for addressing affordable and that missing middle housing shortage within the city. Providing for and encouraging alternative construction that also will help bring some housing affordability to the area, and also work with 3-128 with respect to identifying the affordable housing needs. This can be done a couple of different ways, excuse me. But you can see those three policies right there, we're really making sure to emphasize the need for additional housing, especially that missing middle, that livability component within the city. This doesn't say thou shalt automatically provide subsidies, but this is saying we're opening the door to, as Lisa said, we don't know what's going to happen in the next 5 years, but here's the range of options that we now have at our fingertips. So if somebody comes through with an alternative construction method that can be, meet the building code and is more affordable, why not allow it? This policy supports those types of projects right there. So we wanted to make sure to really, like I said, emphasize the fact of listening to what has been said by the community with, we need more affordable housing and affordable workforce, missing middle. So let's make sure we're reinforcing those policies and those programs so that the city can, there again, continue to move forward with whatever at that point that comes through. The other aspect is that, and this kind of gets back into almost like an infrastructure component, and I know we kind of cross-referenced that a little bit. High-speed internet, and I think Lisa identified that, especially with what's been going on for the last 8 months now, almost 9 months, and the need for high-speed internet, and that's becoming not a bonus, but a necessity. And we were talking about, you know, spouses and friends and people that are working from home full-time now. So why not include something that is referenced not only in the housing component, but also the infrastructure that the city is really pushing for, that, you know, that high-speed internet, those next generation connectivity components. Then the other thing, and I apologize, this did not make it into the text that you received. There was I'll call it the hanging chad when it was printed. But on the slide, you can see we did identify the Zillow analysis with respect to the 10-year home value index. And we also reached out with some of my partners and obtained some information from the National Realtors with respect to the number and location of some of those rental units as far as the numbers and those prices. And that's information that's actually derived as of 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, that's closer than the numbers that were originally. I believe you had 175,000 from 2017, which I bought my house in 2017, and I couldn't find anything for that. So I think Louise might be. You still think the numbers are off?
And this is one of those targets. This is one of those things that is a moving target. It changes so rapidly from time to time that it's on any day of the week you may not be accurate. I get concerned when we say median, and I know that the median is too far off. That's what concerned me so much. And also to use any figures that are 10 years old is like Crazyville. But when we're doing a comp plan, I don't know exactly how you would do it other than to reference sources of current accurate information at any given point.
Yeah, and you know, we're not saying that that's not legitimate, that's not logical or anything like that. There's folks in Tallahassee that do this. I
get to deal with that kind of folks lots of times.
And yeah, and until until that level changes, because that's the ones who sign off on your comp plan with, here's the data, inventory, and analysis, the sources of data that they will accept as competent substantial.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do like this. We can include this as the supplemental so that there is that. Lisa's got the tools to be able to update that on a regular basis so that there is almost like a real-time housing checker, which I think would definitely be something that the city could do very easily. And just to kind of keep this as current as possible portion of your plan.
Mm-hmm. I think it's fine to have a baseline, but to have a mechanism that allows us to adjust annually or whatever.
Even 5 years.
Pardon me?
You know, even like every 5 years. But just give us something to go with. I know what you're saying. Don't want to ruin any opportunity for grants for affordable housing based on numbers that are showing that we have a lot of affordable housing according to state standards. We don't.
We don't.
I know that.
We don't.
So I'm happy with the change.
Yeah.
At least we're moving forward.
Better than nothing.
You're a hard group to please.
We told you we were gonna, there's only 5 of us. We got a lot of energy. We're making up for the missing 4.
What's another, I think it's a very interesting point of data to add and consider for the comparisons. So I'm comfortable with it. Any other questions on the housing element from the commissioners? Mrs. Contmer?
Well, this is probably, I guess it's probably in a different place, but I would assume that we will be having some brainstorming sessions with local landowners and developers as to what it is they need to help us reach our goals, as opposed to merely recognizing that we have an issue. And I think these are the folks who can help us figure out how to get there at some point.
Well, you know, I saw this happen in Brevard County where they had, I can't think of the name of what they called it, but basically a developer session. I'll just give it that name because I can't remember their title, but where they brought them in when it came down to the land development codes and changing of those, as in, hey, how can you help us achieve our goals, you know, and you know, we make it a little easier for you, but you help us achieve our goals to serve our community. And so you go over certain of the land development codes or ordinances and just negotiate, if you will, what serves the community, you know, while not, you know, bringing us closer to our goals. We could do that. We wouldn't do it here, but we would do it during land development code changes.
I got, if I can add in on that,
Of course,
Lisa.
yeah.
Sarasota County brought in, they have what's called the Developers Roundtable. They have a Consultants Roundtable, and they brought those groups together, including the home builders, and with the I'll say the affordable housing entities out there. And what they came up with was, as part of the Land Development Code update, when they did it, was recognizing that units that are less than 750 square feet of habitable space count as half a dwelling unit towards your density. They also qualify for half impact fees. They also qualify for reductions in trip generation when you're doing your developments. So they looked at 750 square feet habitable and 900 square feet. So there's those things are at your fingertips as part of this next component.
Many roads lead to Rome, and the first home that I lived in was 512 square feet, and it was very habitable, worked extremely well.
Mm-hmm. I have one of the gentlemen on my team lives in 600 square feet, him and his wife, so it's like, it works, and they love it.
Well, it's like the typical three-room apartment. Some of us
Container.
as teenagers, you know.
Container.
Container, yes.
Well, I think what we've got here is the framework to allow those types of programs to be developed, and our goal really is to look and make sure that the door is open. Clearly it is with this plan in a number of ways. So I think, you know, that objective is there and clearly stated so that the opportunity is there.
Yes, sir.
And that's good. So then we need to bring in other folks to implement that part of it. Let's move on then to the infrastructure section. Review the changes that we've got there, and this is, let's see, that doesn't encompass any of the additional changes we've got. No, that's from Parks, that's next.
Yeah, Mr. Roth, if I could, just want to make sure and point out there was a lot of discussion regarding green infrastructure. So we wanted to make sure to reference it in this element as part of the DIA, but there's also policies that we've identified in the infrastructure component as well as other portions of the comprehensive plan memorializing the need to utilize and implement the green infrastructure components. So that's probably the biggest, I'll say, change that we had on that specific element.
Well, again, it covers, all of the, I feel the major points. And also one that Ms. Fraser brought up, the high-speed internet access. I mean, it's just touching on the little parts here and there, but it's got all of the framework there again to allow us to do and to move forward, and yet keep the areas that we need to have protected for future of our city, so that we don't get into a total big bricks and mortar thing. Any commissioners have any other questions on the infrastructure?
Yes. It was an issue that Ms. Cottenberg and I had addressed, and I see that you've included some of the language. It has to do with solid waste, and I believe Ms. Cottenberg and I were of the opinion that perhaps we've grown into requiring subscription services, whatever, subscribing with the provider, given that the cost is so low. The language I'm seeing, objective 4-1.3, your wording is in there. It's not, I believe, as strongly worded to urge the city council to consider a mandate of, if you will, to put people on what's available through waste management for the city. Curbing illegal dumping, I believe words were, we got lofty goals and no way to get there. And I'd like to see that strengthened, if there's a way to do so, to encourage the implementation of that. We are growing as a city. It is a problem. I spoke to both code enforcement officers. They would love to see that implemented, make their life a lot easier.
So, Mr. Christina, you're talking about illegal dumping of solid waste? That's illegal.
Yeah, in other words, we've
today.
got, and one of the other issues I see throughout the city, there's not a lot. There's not a lot because the cost is very low.
There's not a lot of what?
To get your garbage picked up.
Okay.
But there are those that will throw their garbage in the back of their pickup truck, and it's there for weeks. And the vultures find it. And the vultures take their select pieces down the block. It contributes to blight. For a very low, $3 a week is your investment per household to get rid of that eyesore.
But please be aware that our land development codes already address this, and that would be the appropriate place to do any kind of regulatory measures if we want to strengthen it in the LDC. Now,
Yeah,
Dory could probably quote us page, verse, and number of where this is in our land development code or in our code of
Yeah, it's actually the
ordinances.
code of ordinances.
Is what I meant, I'm sorry.
And there's a whole section on illegal dumping and garbage collection,
You gotta catch
unsanitary
them.
conditions.
Yeah, we just don't have the manpower to catch the illegal dumpers, and they don't do it before 5 in the afternoon. They know what time the code enforcement guys go home.
We can't regulate everybody's behavior.
No, I know. We're just trying to make it a little better.
We can only do what we can do.
One step at a
and
time.
pray for the best.
Thank you.
This is me, City Attorney. I would agree, and I read, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you're here?
Yep.
Yeah, I just want to chime in because I know you guys mentioned this before. I think code enforcement's a separate issue. I understand what your concern is, Ms. Council Member, Commissioner. However, that will be a separate issue that we can address separately with code enforcement. I am involved with code enforcement. I am part of the board. As far as prosecuting these cases. So I don't, and as far as us mandating our citizens to get involved or contract out with a private company. I don't think that's going to be within, I'm sorry, I don't have my video. I don't think that's going to be within the, definitely it will be a policy decision that has to be made by council, not by this board. I guess it's where I'm trying to go. So I understand your concerns, enforcement and everything, but I think mandating something like that and making our people, our citizens pay or get these services from waste management, I think it's outside of our purview here today. And it's something that council will have to make that call if they want to make that call. And I will have to research that and advise them separately.
I agree with you there. I understand. Typically when this is done, it's brought under the city's purview and it's handled under taxes instead of a billing from waste management.
I'm not sure about their taxes either, but that's a separate issue. This is a legislative matter. It's not before this board. That's just what I want to chime in right now, so you can kind of move on. But I appreciate the concern. Like I said, I'm involved with code enforcement now. I am with Chief Witt and with Janicki and all the two code enforcement officer, and we're moving. I've never heard any issues about any dumping, and I've been with you guys now since February, and none of that has ever come before my board. And any of my issues that there's a concern that we can't comply and we can't cite them or whatever. So if it's out there, if it's in our code right now, my two officers are actually citing people, and we are bringing things before the board.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. And that there will be some action taken on that. There you go. You brought it up, Mr. Cristino, and we got some action. But it is covered in our plan. So you're concerned about action points, and that's a little bit beyond what we're tasked with tonight. So with everyone's agreement, we'll move on to the next section, which is conservation coastal management.
Yes, sir. And at Mr. Cristino's pointing out, and do appreciate that, we now have given him a half a page towards the wetland protection components.
Plus the soils map.
Plus the soils map.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Yeah, so,
I appreciate that.
and I'm not trying to pick on Mr. Cristino's. He was very adamant about making sure that we carried through the different soil types and soil characteristics versus just a general reference. So as you can see, that's an easy
Very
add back
specific.
in. Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you. I went through it, smiled. Goes back to my days playing in the dirt with my Tonka truck, and now I know what kind of dirt I'm playing with.
Yes, absolutely. The other edits, if we could get the PowerPoint back. Yep. There again, the discussions with respect to the City of Sebastian's emergency management plan, as well as the continued discussion with respect to green infrastructure was added back into this element. And Lisa, I know this was the one slide that you wanted to be able to talk about from the NRB.
Yes, and these are the changes or additions that the Natural Resource Board, in their discussion, requested that you all consider as an additive. Really quickly, native habitats, they were just looking for the significant native habitats remaining within the city limits. Every 5 years, possibly do a little inventory. Protection of surface waters, they wanted to add and wetlands, which I'm sure all of you have no problem with. They also wanted to make sure that the inclusion of fisheries protection was mentioned. We added fisheries protection. Hold on, I'm following the wrong thing, sorry. Ensure protection of fisheries and living marine organisms. We just added that to the policy to protect living marine resources. Septic to sewer conversion, they asked you all to consider that, just a consideration that the city shall consider instituting a moratorium on the installation of new septic systems unless the system utilizes new treatment technology for the mitigation of nutrient loading. What the concern is, and I know it's a concern of this commission, that there's many areas within our city that are not, have no access to sewer. They do not have access to the sewer system. However, they have septic systems, and many of the septic systems in place today are functioning just fine. However, should it fail and you need to replace it, the thought process is perhaps the city, and this is not going to happen here, it's just the city will consider it, putting a moratorium that if you have to replace your failing septic system, you do it with one of the newer technology ones that, minimize the nutrient loading that the old systems provide. It's just a consideration.
Yeah.
You all can say yay or nay. And again, it doesn't make it happen. It's only the city council who can put that moratorium on, but it is a consideration. I think that
Excuse
was
me?
one of their biggest ones, yes.
I have a big problem with the M word.
Moratorium?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't like the M word.
Which M word are we talking about?
Considering
Okay.
is good to consider better technologies, but when you use the M word, that means stop, do nothing.
No.
Yeah, I don't like that.
What's the, I haven't looked into the difference in cost. I'm aware of the technology on the septic systems. One of my issues down here with septic systems are the small size of lots. To be honest with you, I'm from up north, and our drain fields, we call them leaching fields, are 4 times the size of what we have available down here. We never replaced our fields up north. They lasted the life of the house. Is the cost prohibitive for a new builder to incorporate? We still have 2,000 lots going up in the Highlands. I know Commissioner Carter's got concerns about the water table rising, which makes it more difficult in the placement of these tanks.
Well, with a policy such as this, you would be able to then, the city council can consider a policy. How's that instead of a moratorium? A policy, or even an ordinance that new septic systems need to, meet some of the new technology. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you what the costs are or what they consist of. I have read about them, but I'm no expert.
Okay, I just have to put my oar in the water here a little bit. This is potentially creating another layer, and we have the state and we have the county, and that now we would have the city layer as well. And I do want to tell you that I know a whole lot more about septic systems than anybody should. And I also know that the very big systems that are used in the north have a lot to do with the rock and clay soil culture.
Well, rock.
And also the fact that what we build here right now, all of the new construction has much better septic system installations now than they did even 2 years ago. What we're building here is something that has been used for quite a long time in other places, which is called a mound system.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's technically what we build here. I think that as technology moves forward and there are better ones, I'm not too sure that the city has the capability to investigate the best technology. I think that goes to the health department and the state and St. John's, and I'm not too sure that the city needs to add another layer. That's just my opinion. So there you are.
Yeah,
I would like to not
let's
see
go
this
under
in
the
there.
health department, they control the thing, so, yeah. Health department control the septic system, the city cannot do that thing, yeah. The biggest problem is the soil conditions. Soil is so bad, 5-10 years back, they were not digging a hole, not bringing any new soil, good soil. So they are just making a mound on top of that. And that's why when it's raining, system gonna stop.
Right.
The soil is fully saturated, so it's not gonna go anywhere, and it's back up to the house.
I believe that's what it's called commonly, sugar sand that's
Yeah.
brought in for the
Good.
fields, and we understand that's quite a bit missing from the city.
Yeah.
Just had to make a little joke.
So that's where it went.
And these are just suggestions from the Natural Resource Board, and you all can, by consensus, say, no, we don't really want to, we feel that this is too onerous, and we don't have to include them.
I mean, the best word you said, the new technologies, just take a moratorium or, isn't it?
I would defer and ask our city attorney, Mr. Nunn, about whether or not we should consider this and make this any stronger than what it really is. Is it going beyond our purview to do that?
Can you say it again, Mr. Chair?
What I was wondering, you know, the discussion we've had is making this point, 5-1.4.13, septic to sewer conversion, considering adding the point that the Natural Resource Board brought to us about making it more definitive. Do you have a copy of that document that was handed to us tonight from the Natural Resource Board dated October 6th?
No, I do not.
Okay, well then generally...
Are you saying that, but understand what you're trying to tell me. You're trying to say that the Natural Resource Board is giving you guys some recommendation which you're trying to incorporate tonight? Or would like to incorporate?
That's correct, and my question is that going beyond what we need to consider tonight? Because it's making a document we have stronger than what it is, and alluding to the fact that we would have to come up with more city control on it. And my own personal feeling is I don't think that we really should get into that, as a couple of the commissioners have mentioned also.
I would concur, Mr. Chair. I think right now we're trying to get through all the elements to final draft. I think what Lisa was alluding to earlier is that we can always come back and amend things or make some minor changes. But right now, I think the goal is try to get through all these elements of final draft and make your final recommendations for we can move forward. So I do kind of concur with what you're alluding to. Just try to stick to what we're trying to do with the presentation. Go through step by step what you want to add to it. If any changes, I think you guys are doing an amazing job. I'm learning a lot just by listening to you guys, and just move forward. But I do agree with you, Mr. Chair. I think we just stick to the elements, go through them, and just knock this thing out.
Okay. Any commissioners have any objection to that?
Oh.
Okay. I think it was maybe stepping a little bit too far, but, you know, there's thought going into it, and we appreciate that. We considered it, so... let's see, where were we with, I labeled them item 5-1-1.5.
This is just changing, right now it says meets or exceeds, and it was recommended that we change the wording to meets or maintain state or federal air quality standards. I mean, trying to really determine how we're exceeding it would be difficult, according to the scientist on the Natural Resource Board. So we just did a word change there. And then the Land Use and Transportation Policy 5-1.1.53, 5.3, we added and emissions from idling vehicles. It's just we're encouraging land use and transportation modes for limiting the need of automobile use, increasing trip capture, and reducing traffic congestion. That was in there before. We just only added and emissions from idling vehicles.
I have an objection to that.
You do?
Yes.
Okay.
And again, for the very same reason, many of the newer vehicles stop when you're idling.
Yep,
That's
right.
a technology that, and I think It's one of those things about we need to stay in our lane a little bit. And I think that's inappropriate.
That's why I'm here
Idling
before you
vehicle.
this evening.
Any other opinions on that? I would concur with that.
The only difference I have, we're in a city where there's awful lot of big trucks, and they don't shut off. You know, a car does. And if that's a diesel and you're sitting outside the school, I mean, here, up north it was an issue because you kept your car warm. You know, down here you
let me
keep your
ask
car
you-
cool.
Okay, let me ask you then, how would you enforce that? How?
That's,
How?
it's like seatbelts, it's like cell phones. It's not really, what are we gonna have, a code enforcement officer outside of the school? I agree with you.
I mean, what do...
As far as enforcement,
The city of Sebastian is going to make rules for emissions?
yeah.
that
Well,
the
a lot of
manufacturers
cities
are gonna
do
follow?
it outside the schools. They don't want the cars idling because of pollution.
So you turn them off.
Well,
Turn them back on when the kid gets in.
they have to be told to do it, you know.
Put your mask on.
Put your mask on, right?
Yeah.
Point well taken.
You know, the point's taken, Louise, I understand.
Okay, and then the next was just changing, I think it was post-hurricane to post-emergency,
It was post-disaster.
post-disaster to post-emergency.
Which post-disaster is more of the universally accepted nomenclature that everybody's utilizing, especially when it comes to grants and other things. That's my only comment with respect to that.
Change it back. Are you sure it wasn't post?
5241?
No, that's post-hurricane assessment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, I was incorrect. On 5-2.4.1, it states post-hurricane assessments. And so we thought that we would change it to post-emergency assessments because,
It's the same thing.
well, it's not. We
Yeah.
don't just have hurricanes here anymore.
Yeah, right.
We have flooding,
Yeah.
we have, you know, pandemics, we have, you know, who knows what in the future. So we instead of just saying post-hurricane assessments, we changed to post-emergency assessments.
I
Now,
think you'd have to use the word declared emergency, otherwise emergency is open to interpretation.
Is that where you're going, Kelly? Okay. Can we do post-disaster assessments?
I mean, typically, when you're looking at this type of thing, you know, it is specific to the hurricanes because of the nature of where we are. I mean, if you just wanted to refer to that as post-disaster, I would, you know, that's fine.
Support that?
And if I could also add, you don't have to have a declared emergency for the city of Sebastian to have an emergency. So declared emergency is a term of art used obviously for FEMA to loosen the funds. Can you guys hear me? I'm sorry, it's Manny, the city attorney. Can you guys hear me?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
We're thinking about what you're saying.
Okay, I want to make sure. Okay, well, because you're talking about emergency, and I heard Commissioner mention that it should be declared. A declared emergency is a term of art used for FEMA funds, meaning it's declared from the top down, federal government, all the way down to our level. But we don't have to have a declared emergency. If for example, there is a local emergency, it's within our charter that the mayor can declare an emergency. So I just want to make sure I clarify that. So however, whatever term you want to use for the purposes of the code, I think it's fine the way it was personally, but that's just me. I don't see the whole term other than what you just showed me. I'll stay quiet now.
This paragraph start with the sentence, consistent with the city management, emergency plans. It start with that, so. So, yeah.
So are you stating make it
I mean,
emergency?
leave as it is to me. So,
Just leave it hurricane?
yeah,
Okay. It's
because
up-
sentence
you know,
start with the Sebastian Emergency Management Plan, yeah.
I I think it's better the broader term, if I can add again, not just hurricane, because if the purpose is, let me back up. If the purpose is to address emergencies, I do agree with Lisa. There's more than just hurricanes that hit our areas. We can have several other kind of emergencies, and I don't know who would expect a pandemic, which is a totally different emergency. So if you want to make a broader term, I think that's probably more appropriate, but that's up to the board.
I would concur.
I
think
like me personally.
it's not going to hurt.
How it is, I think it's fine.
It's not going to hurt anything to add the word emergency, post-hurricane, and emergency assessments. Or just simply strike hurricane and put in post-emergency. It's not going to hurt anything by doing that. And that'll satisfy a concern, and hurricane, I think, is rather limiting. So I think we can comfortably agree on striking hurricane and adding the word emergency assessment, or not assessment, it's already there. Oh yeah, or even the monsoon rain we had 3-4 weeks ago and the big flood. I mean, it wasn't an emergency to people on the far south part of Sebastian, but it was where it was in that, how many block area was it? 8, 9? I mean, it was a problem, so that's an emergency for them. Okay, let's move on, let's not belabor the point.
And if I can't, yeah, okay, thank you for Chair. I'll just say, and words mean things, so if you start saying only hurricane, people are going to interpret, well, that's only hurricane, has nothing to do with floods or any other stuff. So I think a more broader term is probably more applicable. I do agree with the recommendations from staff.
Correct. Yep. I think that's where we're at, striking hurricane and adding emergency. Okay, thank you. And there was another point, wasn't there? Oh, that's in another section, I'm sorry. Yeah. Any other commissioners' comments then about the Conservancy section? Okay, let's move on then to the one that's labeled Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Element.
Yeah, Commissioners, some of this, a lot of this information was derived from previously prepared data source. What we've done is working with city staff who prepared a lot of that baseline data was to update certain policies with respect to the population projections within the next 20 years, modification or clarification of the level of service standards for the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space system. And I can't remember which commissioner brought this up, but nameplates identifying native plants, identification and addition of trail linkages, and also providing a policy specific to addressing the needs for all-inclusive play equipment within city parks. Those are some of the bigger highlights, and then also getting into these additional elements, including a brand new element, a brand new policy, 6164, with respect to boat ramps and parking. This is also something that we've encouraged the city to undertake. They need to do a master parks, recreation, open space master plan with an emphasis on the boating components. That's ramps, parking, facilities of all nature, of all kinds, and that gets back into some of your green infrastructure as well. So, adding some specific language with respect to and serving the boating community in this area. So those were the major items that we modified or added with respect to this element.
And I want to add that some of these comments were, I believe, brought forth from the Parks and Rec Board, too. So some of that is summarized in there, too.
And which numbers were those again that you mentioned, 6?
I'm sorry, Mr. Ron?
Which section numbers was it you mentioned, the major points that were added?
That's in the 6-1 series. with respect to parks levels of service. It also gets into 616, which was respectfully addressing boat ramps and parking.
Oh, correct, yes. Yep.
Right. I believe Mr. Hugan had brought it up. I'm a boater myself. That number doesn't fly. Here, we just definitely need more boat ramps. We have 26,000 in the city now, so you're implying 2 ramps would take care of.
I'm going to defer to the city.
Yeah.
Prepared that one. I was going to say.
That number may come from an inland community. You know, that could be like, is that a state of Florida number? That's good for the whole state, or is that representative of a coastal community that's right on the water? You know, there's a big difference there. Those boat ramps are crowded. I mean, especially on the weekend. Maybe not so much during the week, but.
You also have to realize that it's not just
I'm out there at 8 o'clock trying to get my parking spots.
It's not just city residents in those boat ramps, so.
And I understand we don't have the room for a ramp, and it would be up to the county, so according to Mr. Carlisle. We'll have to see how that goes. We got to take that into consideration as we add population here.
And there again, that's one of the things that we've recommended when you do, if the city undertakes a park recreation open space master plan, is to relook at your level service standards, because I believe you're utilizing the state recommended standards, which, like I said, there again, we did not prepare the data or the level service components on that. But this, when you do that parks master plan, is really when you need to get in there, and then you come back and update your comp plan based off of those findings. Because there's a whole lot of analysis, because we just wrapped one up for Manatee County. And, you know, similar situation with not enough boat ramps, not enough boat parking, not enough facilities for non-motorized boating. And that was a consistent theme, so we did look at augmenting those standards over there. But that was part of literally a year-long study, along with other components of their park system.
Do we want to make any recommendation on that as far as a change?
The city has some property. They've got those dock areas. They're really not officially docks. It's a pier that goes out near, it's over by the fishermen's working waterfront. I believe the city owns that.
Yes,
There's
sir,
a
but
pier that goes
that's a
out
working
there?
waterfront. That's for commercial fishermen.
Well, the commercial fishermen have their own docks over to the left.
No,
I don't see any boats over at the other piers.
we
When
have
you go out.
we have a long walking pier, but it's not for boats.
Yeah, there's
not
like a
for boats.
marina facility for the fishermen.
That is correct.
They actually have their own slips.
That is correct.
Over to if you're facing east, on the right, there's a pier.
That is not, that's private ownership. That's
That's
not,
private, that's a large pier, that's privately owned.
that is owned by someone else, yes, sir. That is
Okay.
all private, where you have the sculptures and,
Right,
no, that's private. That is not part of the city's property.
it's not part of the city's property,
No, sir.
okay.
We're right behind the bathroom, and that's it. That's our line.
All right, so much for that idea.
Keep thinking, though. Keep
Well,
thinking.
Gotta get outside the box.
That's right. Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
I'm not leading this. Sorry, Mr. Roth. I'm just...
Just consistent with the guidance that we received, we did identify within the ISBA, which is the Interlocal Service Boundary Agreement, which is a documentation or agreement between the city and the county, including some additional potential language for provisions for utility services, public facilities, and services. A lot of those things are already addressed in a lot of your documents, but this is just solidifying those components. There was also, with respect to adequate facilities, that a statement be identified or added no later than its anticipated date of issuance of a certificate of occupancy. And that's getting into the issuance of development orders. The other component we had was under policy 7261, under the evaluation of new development impacts,
Hang on a second, 7261.
which is providing additional language with respect to permits or development applications, and also the demonstration that all urban services needed for the proposed development shall be provided concurrent with. So that language was added into that specific policy. So again, those are providing additional assurances for the city that what is needed on or in or below the ground when development occurs is occurring.
Can I comment on that?
Yes, sir.
So I noticed the word shall, understanding that that's not a suggestion for the city, shall ensure that new developments. So these evaluations would be expected to be undertaken by the city before, say, another annexation of property to evaluate the impact financially on the city as well as traffic and so on.
It, depends on how the city wants to structure those. If it is an applicant for a development like that has to utilize the city's level of service standards and identify and do the analysis, and the city does their own review and or provides a third party independent review. That's typically what you're seeing with those.
All right, because currently now in Lisa's department, they come into the city for a development, you would evaluate it, what your impact is, if we're going to need you to put in for, say, parks or schools, et cetera. We're running along that vein and protecting the residents from overdevelopment.
Yes, sir.
We already do that.
Yeah.
We already, for every
That's what I'm
development.
saying.
Bosch can
That's a-
attest to that.
That's where we have in the 6.2 developer agreement refused.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, we already
No, I-
require all our developments to prove
aware of
that how they're going to alleviate any impacts, as well as in our annexations. We have annexation studies that people have to come in and prove financially what the benefit is or what the detriment might be, and what the concurrency aspects are of that development. But again, it has to be at a high level when you're talking about an annexation until we get into the development order, into the construction plans, and then it gets more fine-tuned.
Right.
And Lisa,
So
correct me
just
if I'm
know
wrong.
the difference of the two.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong. I think that was also a recommendation from Treasure Coast as part of your overall annexation process. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Phew, got that one right.
Could I just hear that again about 7.1.6?
7.2.
Yeah.
Public schools?
No, it's 7.2, Louise.
Okay, thank
6.
you.
It's under new development, huh?
Which part? Mrs. Kattenberg. For the level of service?
No, when I'm reading the policy, 7.1.6.1, implementation of the interlocal agreement, the City of Sebastian will implement the procedures and policies provided in the Indian River County Interlocal Agreement. Okay, got it. Never mind. Sometimes I have to say it out loud before I understand it.
No,
Sorry.
I do that all the time.
With respect to the school district, ma'am? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm fine with it now, now that I've heard it.
Are there any other questions on the governance section?
Joe, before you move on, just,
There's a lot of data here, I know, and
I know.
we went through it before. I didn't note any changes in our comments
I'm
before.
looking.
So, in my mind, we're clear on that.
Let's see, no. I'm good. I've already covered what I had noted.
Okay, the next section then would be schools. Public school element.
They sort of do their own thing.
Yeah,
That's an accurate statement, Mr. Simmons.
yeah.
However, what we did was just to kind of add some additional language that, recognizing schools are neighborhood assets and community attractions. I think that also kind of goes back to support discussions that you have from a parks and recreational component. And also that, I think this is a well-founded comment of making sure we have adequate or improved pedestrian and bicycle transportation linkages around schools for those school-age children that are actually walking, riding their bikes or whatever at that point instead of being driven every morning. And that was the major updates to that specific element.
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong then, unless any of the commissioners have any other questions, we would open it to public input. Is that correct?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes, you would open public.
The school population numbers. While we're on there, I had brought it to your attention that your number on Treasure Coast Elementary included portable classrooms, and I noticed that you broke it out for Sebastian River Middle School on there. That's almost 100 students. I believe Treasure Coast Elementary, your actual number is 720. I'm surprised to see this year's enrollment down. It was higher last year. Treasure Coast Elementary had gave me the impression they were almost full. But you have no notation on, and I'm wondering if that's par for the course with some of the other schools. I did these numbers last year. I know Pelican Island, you're pretty close on there, but I know that you're off by over 80 on Treasure Coast Elementary because they consider that emergency use, those portables, to get to that 799. And it's just right next to it that you have broken out with portables for Sebastian River Middle School.
Well, please try to remember, Mr. Christina, we get these numbers from the school board.
Right.
They're the ones who provide it for us, and as Mr. Simmons
Yeah, no, some of the other numbers are right on.
stated that, this element is actually not even required.
No, the school district does
Yeah,
this.
most municipalities put it in because it's a really good piece of information that we get from the school board and which they compile for us to at least make people aware of what's going on with our educational system. So again, it's an element that we don't even need to have in our comp plan like the economic element, but we have them in, and I think it was a good decision to keep it in. I think all of you through this process have also supported that because it's a good piece of information, but maybe the numbers are off, but they gave them to us.
Okay.
So we weren't counting the heads.
No,
They
no.
count the heads. So.
I've gone directly to, was our liaison? Forget her
Yes,
name.
I
It's
forget
been
her
a
name.
while.
That's what I was
Dory
trying to remember.
deals with her.
The young lady we've been talking with throughout this process.
Yes, I forget her name. Dory, what's
Yeah.
yes.
I know I compiled the numbers and came up with a percentage myself to do a calculation on what we could handle for development in the city last year. So I'm kind of familiar with those numbers. All right, thank you. I understand
okay, well,
that.
we'll have to accept it because that's what they gave us and we can't
That's
adjust that
it.
at
We're
this
not going to
point.
change it now, Joe.
Yeah. Okay, well, would that be appropriate, Ms. Frazier and Ms. Bosworth, as far as opening to public comment at this point?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
So, first, did I hear our attorney, Mr. Anand?
I was just going to agree with you. Yeah, open up. The chair should open up now for a public comment, and don't forget to Zoom.
Okay, is there anyone present first that would like to discuss any points on the plan, comprehensive plan for the city of Sebastian? Please come forward, sir, and give us your name. And we appreciate your patience.
No problem.
There are a lot of points to cover to make sure this is...
Huh? Oh. That'll work? Can you hear me? Okay.
Thank you.
My name is Jim Weber, and I live in Sebastian. And
I'm
I have
sorry,
to admit,
I didn't catch your name.
Jim Weber, can you hear me? Does this go on?
Okay.
Okay. And I live in Sebastian, and before we start, I have to admit, I'm a little cloudy on the mixed land use specifics versus zoning specifics. But we can probably talk about that later. But I own property on High Street in the Triangle. And I'm here to share some concerns and input about it. I purchased the Triangle property 25 years ago for its location and zoning. And as you know, along with location, the higher the permitted uses, the higher the land value. Industrial zoning is a high-value zoning. Industrial zoning also comes with a negative connotation for its undesirable uses. That being said, I don't want that to happen any more than you do. The Triangle has for decades, in the city planning discussions, been referred to as the gateway to the city. I personally think it should and hope it will be developed as the center of town. The city garage will be moving, and aside from the VFW and American Legion, most of the Triangle will be available for development. My issue is this: personal property rights are critical. This land is a 25-year investment for my family and our retirement. At the July 30th P&Z meeting, a board member posed a question to Lisa about changing a 510 project property from commercial general to institutional. Lisa's response was, quote, "No, sir. That is a private property."
Mr. Chair, point of order, City Attorney. Mr.
Yes.
Chair,
Yes.
I believe this witness is actually is not talking about whether he agrees approval or denial. If he's going to give factual information, which appears he is, and I believe he gave the board some documents, I believe that someone needs to swear him in if he's going to provide factual information for the board. And I believe that's what he's doing right now. He needs to be sworn in.
Okay, would you proceed then with that, City Attorney?
Dory, do you have the oath there? I don't have it present in front of me.
I don't, but I can summarize what Jeanette usually states.
Yeah, just raise your right hand and just swear and affirm.
If you could raise your right hand and swear to affirm that the factual evidence that you are giving is true information.
Yes.
Okay, and now state your full name for the record, sir.
Jim Weber.
Okay, go ahead. I apologize, Mr. Chair.
No problem.
No, thank you, you're fine.
Okay, at that meeting, a member posed a question about changing a 510 project property from commercial general to institutional. Lisa's response, quote, "No, sir, that is a private property, and if you take away their property rights, which would be commercial general, and down it to institutional, that is taking away people's personal property rights," close quote. I understand what I'm talking about tonight isn't as extreme as that, but let me show you how things have progressed over the last couple of decades. The papers you hold are simply printouts of City of Sebastian website land uses. I made these printouts to make it easier for you to follow my concerns. The Triangle is made up of 3 zoning districts, and the city wants, and I agree, to maybe consolidate the districts to help create the concept of the city gateway or downtown area. What you're holding is 4 sections of the land use: commercial general original uses, industrial original uses, Commercial general use changes with the overlay, the triangle overlay, and industrial use changes with the triangle overlay. If you go to the industrial original uses pamphlet, the red dots indicate all the industrial uses removed or made conditional by the triangle overlay. The green dots indicate those retained for some reason in commercial general, and some permitted in commercial general but not in industrial. For some reason, they restricted industrial much more in the overlay. Why the difference in the same triangle? Farmers market? Gasoline sales? That's allowed in commercial general. Not that I want it, but it's allowed. Bars and lounges, commercial general, but not in industrial. Pharmacies? Why? Fish markets? Schools? No. Going forward, maintaining our industrial lot building coverage and setbacks are absolutely critical for land value. I have a slope on my property created with the approval of the city years ago, many years ago. But the 20-foot, 10-foot, and 0 setbacks that we have now are needed to keep the land cost-effectively buildable. I'm also speaking for Bill Welsh. If anybody you know the yellow house up on the hill, Marilyn Monroe phone booth, but Bill's up north now. Bill built that beautiful house on a 50-foot lot, owning no other property on High Street at the time. He did need a variance, but it wasn't a problem as the city was not opposed to mixed use then. He subsequently bought the property down to 512, and look what he's done with it. It looks like a park. Everyone was pleased. I inquired about building a house on a lot. Now it requires 150 feet, 3 lots, 15,000 square feet. Why? Another ding in my ability to use the land as purchased. It's obvious Bill, like all of the Triangle industrial zoning owners, respect what the triangle means. That's why we bought it there. But I cannot go on, we cannot go on, little by little, having our uses or densities taken away. In conversation with Lisa, expressing my desire to right the wrongs, she replied, this would be the time to do it. So please put yourselves in our place and give thoughtful and respectful consideration when making your decisions. That's all I've got.
Thank you very much for your comments and your detailed work on this. If I may ask a question at this
I was going to
point.
ask Lisa to give us some background on this.
That's what I was going to ask for, please.
Absolutely. Dory and I have had many wonderful conversations with Mr. Weber. This is what I'll summarize for you, and if I'm incorrect, Mr. Weber, please come back up and correct me. As Mr. Weber has expressed, they bought the property. It is zoned industrial. It was land-used industrial. It still is land-used industrial. If you look at the triangle area, there's a lot of mixed uses in there. There's a mix of uses in there, and it has always been designated, if you will, as the entrance to the city, the downtown area, and there's always been the desire, and it's expressed in our current comprehensive plan, for it to be, you know, like kind of the entranceway, if you will. And it's also mentioned in our CRA master plan as such. So years ago, and I wasn't here, I can't recall, Dory, I believe you may have been here, but maybe not in the capacity that you serve today. But this commission changed the zoning uses in the triangle. You created the triangle overlay, and when that was done, what's permissible as far as architectural and all of that, it's supposed to follow the riverfront overlay, right, district. But the triangle itself, the commission and the city changed the permitted uses from the normal industrial and CG areas in the city. They changed the permitted and conditional uses. They reduced what was allowed. That's the zoning, okay? And that is what's in place today. So though, from my conversations with Mr. Weber, I do not believe he has a problem with what the zoning is today. He just wants to make sure that it doesn't get reduced again in the future. Correct. So what we've assured him is that when we change the land use, it's not going to change your uses as of today, right? You're grandfathered in. When you change and I'll ask for the attorney to chime in too, you change the land use to mixed use, and in the mixed use land use, we are including the industrial, the commercial general, help me, the PS, what's the PS? Thank you. That is there today. So those uses will continue, that zoning will continue, and should they want to redevelop, or if they should want to develop, they'll still be allowed to, and Kelly's shaking his head too, in their current zoning, okay? So Mr. Weber's property would remain industrial zoning as it is today. His setbacks and all remain the same. His density remains the same, correct? Now, moving forward, the city may want to consider creating a mixed-use zone. And this is actually in compliance with the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council's recommendation, the DEO's recommendation. We may want to consider creating a mixed-use zone, okay? We may want to rezone the whole triangle as a mixed-use zone, correct? We will have to be very sensitive that if we do that, we do not compromise these existing property owners' rights that they have today. Am I making sense? So in a mixed-use zoning, we would allow these uses that are there today, but allow a lot more flexibility. That is the reasoning behind a mixed-use zoning.
Well, going forward, if we do make any, I mean, that's not even the purview tonight. We're not changing anything.
Except the land use. We're
No,
just
there is
putting
a
it
land
under an
use change
umbrella.
tonight she's doing. We don't have it.
No. We're changing the land use. We're just putting it under a mixed-use land use, so that.
I don't see anything here on it, though.
What do you mean?
Well,
It's
don't
been in there a long time, Mr. Roth, for the triangle to be, the flu
in
to
the
change.
plan?
Yes, sir. The flu map shows the triangle to be a mixed-use land use.
Okay, then pardon my ignorance on it. I didn't know that this plan was going to change the land use.
Yes, sir. We have been pointing out for a while that there's two areas in the city that we had
One at the
proposed to
airport.
change. Doc Fisher's property around his big lake, and then the triangle, and now the airport has asked that piece change to mixed use also. So the mixed.
Okay, the only map that I've seen was just the one that was flashed on the screen a little while ago. I've not seen anything else. And if it's on one of the smaller maps, I can see why we need something.
Okay, well, it was pointed out in previous presentations, so I apologize if you've missed that. I do apologize, but it's been pointed out in previous.
Well, I certainly agree with Mr. Weber that there is no way that we can possibly change the use that would impact his value on the land.
Correct.
Please.
I'm not necessarily content with the zoning I have on the overlay. If you look at those inconsistencies, we had the widest use zoning, but yet the GC, take farmers markets. And again, I don't know who's farmers market. Why would they not put it in, and I don't care about that, but why would they not put that in to industrial when it makes no sense? You need to look at this close and see, so many things, all those red dots they took out, and not many of them make any sense. I don't care about the gasoline, all the dirty stuff, no. But just what they left into the CG and took away from the industrial makes no sense. Now, I don't know down the road where you guys can fix that when this all mixed use thing comes together and it's all But it needs to be addressed. I mean, I don't think when they did that, they thought it all through.
City has a property, what comes this, under mixed use? There's a police garage there, parking there, city owns that property, right? Part of the.
Correct, but it's institutional.
It's institutional, okay.
Correct, and
But-
everything, right now, the
But that's
land
come in
use.
the same triangle, so.
That is
Yeah,
correct, and
yeah.
right now, excuse me, institutional land use, and it's public service.
Zoning.
Yeah,
Zoning.
public-
public
And
service,
I
yeah.
think, Lisa, Lisa, I wanted to also explain it, so we don't get confused, that there's an industrial land use, there's an industrial zoning. There's an institutional
Yeah.
land use
Yeah,
that goes with
institutional.
public service zoning. There's a commercial general land use, there's a commercial general zoning. And the information that Mr. Weber gave you has to do with his zoning, but tonight and with the comp plan, we're just talking about the land use. And what we're doing is, if you look at the triangle, and I like to think of it as those 7-layer salads, we have this layer of commercial general, we have this layer of institutional, we have this layer of industrial, and what we're going to do with this new mixed-use zoning is we're going to shake this all up, and all of the uses are now going to be allowed in all of those zoning districts. We're opening the door so that when we get to the zoning in the land development code, we can adjust Mr. Weber's concerns with these different uses and permitted and conditional uses in the zoning. But we're talking about land use tonight on the comprehensive land use plan, future land use map, for this new mixed-use land use that we've created.
Okay.
And it
Thank
is
you.
different from the zoning.
Thank you, Dory. Your
Yeah.
visualizing of it is
Yeah.
spot on. Thank you.
Yeah, it's get mixed up with land use and zoning, so.
Right,
yeah.
we don't want to mix the two,
Yeah.
okay? We're talking about land use, and what Dory's trying to say is that we feel that this is going to assist those landowners in getting a lot, if we change the zoning, this will allow us to change the zoning so that it would allow these landowners to enjoy a little bit more flexibility and provide them with more opportunity for their property. I think what Mr. Weber's concern is that, this is what he was allowed when he bought the property. We all changed the zoning to reduce the uses, and he's not necessarily opposed to that. He just doesn't want it to have it again and compromise his use of the property. And so why we even encouraged him to come this evening was to express to you all and make sure that we all understand that if we move forward with changing the zoning in the future to a mixed-use zoning, that we are sensitive to that thought. Did I get that correct?
Yeah. So you're saying now there is no land use designation, I guess I'm still, land use in the triangle, there is no land use, it's just rezonings, is that?
No, you have a land use, you have an industrial land use.
And industrial zoning,
Correct. Yes, sir.
okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And so you can only do those things
Right,
allowed in the industrial.
Right, I understand.
In a mixed, if we change this to a mixed-use land use, then we decide.
And then the zoning could be tweaked.
That is correct, because right now you are hampered by what you have.
Yeah, and I wasn't.
Well, you were still only industrial zoning and industrial land use.
It was wide
You've
open.
always been that.
Hey, but it was wide open.
I understand. Well, it was a lot broader, but when they did the overlay,
Yeah.
it did change some of the permitted uses, and I apologize, I wasn't here.
Right, I
I am
understand.
positive the city did all of the correct public involvement steps, but these days, we're all going a step further, and we can go a step further with technology.
Yeah.
And what I promised Mr. Weber, should I still be here, or maybe future Lisa, I'm going to put it on the record right now, and if COVID's over, we like to now bring the public meetings to that area or to the property owners themselves. And so should we want to do that in the future, changing the zoning, I'm saying, we would go to the property owners there and hold a meeting of some sort. And when I worked for Kimley Horn, we did that all the time. So does that I don't want you to walk away, and I don't want any of the property owners in the triangle to feel uncomfortable with the moves we are making tonight, because this body will have to make a recommendation.
Yeah, I guess you know where I'm coming from. The things that already happened aren't good, not your fault.
And they're not going to change. That's
Well,
the way
that's,
it is right
again, I went backwards quite a bit, but going forward, you know, they could have said back then, we're not gonna mess you up, Mr. Weber. Well, they did. And now it's being said again. I'm for you guys. You know exactly what my vision is of the triangle. It's, you know.
I think it's important to put on the record too, that if the recommendation in this, if the comprehensive plan changes the land use to the triangle to mixed use, the land use right now, the existing zoning is still in place, and maybe we won't get to proposing a new mixed-use zoning for that area for 6-7 months down the road. Yeah. He's grandfathered in all of the uses. His zoning is still there, and his uses and everything is grandfathered in. That is not changing. What he handed to you, that's not changing the existing. Yeah. But I really think that when we get to possibly a mixed-use zoning for the triangle, that it's actually going to open up a lot more things for what they're going to be able to do.
I envisioned it as, being the center, people walking, shopping, residents on top of businesses, I mean, I don't know.
That's what we envision as well, and I'd like to assure you that I don't think there's anybody on this board who has any feeling, and this may be different than it was many years ago, of restricting your legitimate uses or an unfair taking of your ability to use your property. But I think what we're looking for is to enhance and add to what you can do there, instead of saying, you may only do these 7 things. We're going to say, you can do these 7 things that you can always do, and 12 more.
Yeah. Well, like I say, what's really important to me is in the industrial zoning, and I don't know, Dory could, aside from the uses, the land coverage and setbacks were really beneficial in the industrial zoning. I don't think they're that
restrictive,
lenient. Need to keep that. So when all this mixed use comes about, we still need that. Like I told you about the slope. I don't know if you're aware. I mean, I got to have a 20-foot setback. I mean, there's a lot of unusable land if we went to something like. But so that's more critical than even the uses to me, is the building coverage existing now and the setbacks and all.
I think what had happened in 2003, the city had spent some money, did another blighted study to add the triangle into our CRA district. And they had this vision for the triangle, and the first site plan that came in was the firehouse garage. And everybody panicked, thinking we're never going to get a vision for the triangle because we have all this industrial area. So instead of rezoning, what they did was they kind of adjusted this overlay with the uses, and they took some of the uses out of the industrial area because they didn't want it in the triangle. So it was kind of a panic thing. I know there hasn't been a lot of development in the triangle, so I think with our upcoming land development changes, we're going to be able to correct some of that and actually get regulations in that will bring us more towards that original vision that they had for the triangle. With the density transfers and things like that.
I think that you all know Dory and I, and as planners, I've never really met any planners who want to make plans in a box. We like to get people's input into a plan. So we wouldn't be making this type of change without coming forward and making sure everybody has their input. It's very important to make a good plan work.
I don't think we specifically mentioned it tonight, but I think that we had thought something about adding a district which might be called heavy industrial.
When we brought this to this commission, you all did not want to address it in land use, and so that is why there is a policy, and Kelly had brought it up in the PowerPoint, that we would be addressing heavy and light industrial as part of the LDRs.
Okay, that's fine.
And quite frankly, the limited or light industrial definition is probably going to be very close to what we have in the triangle district now, the uses that are allowed in the triangle
Right.
uses now.
Okay, I understand.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving forward then, to sum it up, we're changing the land uses, we're not changing the zoning.
So just to dial back and make sure we're clear on the properties that are being affected. We have a strip at the golf course or the airport area. And the triangle area. And you
Correct.
mentioned a property on a lake owned by Mr. Fisher. Could you elaborate?
If you look at your,
99th Street.
I'm
My
sorry.
mic's on.
If you look at your future land use map, Kelly, can you pull it up on the, I don't know if we can, clicker, please. Can we get it back up on the screen? I know it's there. Go all the way back to land use. So look at your land use map, future land use map, page 44. If you look at the mixed use land use, it's a light pink all by itself on the right side of the legend. You'll see that the triangle is this light pink, and you'll see Doc Fisher's lake way down south there.
Off of Land Street? It's a sand mine operation? now?
That's correct, off 99th.
And you're looking to make that a mixed use?
Correct.
That's in the neighborhood district?
It's, right now, all along the railroad track there, the land use, the current land use is industrial. Okay, and then the current land use adjacent to the single-family homes is residential. So by changing this, now they can do a development that might make more sense and have less impact on the single-family residentials there, but also be compatible with being right adjacent to the railroad tracks.
What's it zoned right now?
Industrial.
Zoning is,
All of it's industrial?
no, just the strip along the railroad tracks, the whole eastern side of that
What's
lake.
the other blue
Residential.
area?
So if you look at your existing map, oh Lord, where am I? I think I'm right there. It's all purple. It's all
I know.
industrial
You
along the
referenced
railroad.
page 44. 44 is blue-gray.
It's light pink along the lake, the whole lake. And the Fishers came in and we talked about it, and they seem to be,
Lisa, the lake is blue, but it's the perimeter.
right, the lake is blue. I'm sorry, Mr. Roth, it's water.
Yeah.
It's just a big, it's their existing sand mine operation right now.
Can you see Joel over here?
Oh, yeah, I see it.
Oh,
That's
okay,
just-
right here.
Yeah.
It's called Lake Erica on some maps. It's been a sand mining operation for years. I just want to make sure that I happen to be not far from that area, and kind of interested in not having the area degraded by any zoning requests from Mr. Fisher.
Well,
Over there.
whoever's
The southern
within-
end along the train tracks is industrial, but the other area abuts a residential area there at Land Street.
Oh, they're very much aware of that. This allows them to have a little bit more flexibility with the property. They've talked about making the lake accessible possibly, you know,
I
for
would
the
love to
public.
see that. Walking
They're looking
paths.
at commercial, I mean, I don't think that they have anything, you know, cemented in mind right now, but, you know, this allows them to have a little bit more flexibility with the site. It's a very
Commercial?
unique piece of property, and it'll be, you know, not that easy to develop.
Yeah, it'll be residential. It'll be residential.
Two questions.
Yes, sir.
Why was this not mentioned before this evening?
Yeah.
It was mentioned before this evening. It has been,
no.
this has been on this map for months. It was even in the first rendition of the future land use map.
Pardon me for being blind.
I'm sorry, but we did.
I only recalled the one tract of land next to the airport. No.
Yeah.
No, that was this
And then
evening,
the
we talked
triangle,
about the
I admit,
airport.
there was conversation, but I didn't ask enough questions about it. This, I had no knowledge of this whatsoever.
I'm so
before
very
tonight.
sorry. But
Yeah.
this change has been, these mixed-use areas, we brought up at the first, one of the very, I would say, it's during our land use element meeting, whenever that was. We'll have to look at the map
Okay,
here.
well, moving forward then, question number 2 I have is,
July 30th.
you just mentioned commercial in this mixed land use? In the pink area around the lake?
In a mixed-use land use, you're allowed commercial, limited industrial, and residential. So it becomes, and institutional.
I don't know if that's a wise move, because you have yellow residential all around it, and you wouldn't want industrial in a mixed land use possibility.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want that next to industrial.
It's already
Or next to-
industrial.
It's already industrial.
It's already industrial.
Just the
Right now,
southern part.
today, it is zoned industrial, and the land use is industrial.
Along
Right
the,
adjacent to the residential. So that is why we're looking to give it a little bit more flexibility to become something other than industrial. Right now, today, it can only be industrial.
And don't forget, this is land use.
This is
When
land
we
use.
come to the zoning map, we can zone certain areas, residential, multifamily, or you can do the commercial general. You'll get your zoning too adjacent to your residential districts, but this is just land use.
yeah, I don't
Understand.
want to see any commercial going up next to the residential homes that are in the area. You got Marbury Street, you got
Would you
Lane
rather see
Street.
industrial?
No, well, you can
Well,
go
that's what you
industrial
can do
only
right
along
now.
the train tracks.
And
He's
that's-
got dual
that's
zoning
right
there, correct?
adjacent to the, that's right adjacent to the single family.
I'd like to see the overlay on that, how that's split up. I know the property very well there.
Yeah, whole thing.
It's on the existing future land use map.
I'm not comfortable myself right now.
I'm not either with that, just simply by tacking on a mixed land use on something like that, because that's step number 1. Step number 2 then is you go through the whole zoning process and, you know, well, you've already done step number 1, so then it's easier to do step number 2, and it may not be, you know, palatable. That's a big area that encompasses that side.
It certainly is.
The west side that is up against all what would be called low-density residential.
The developable area of that is not that large. It may look large, but it's mostly lake.
Yeah, the most of
Well, but
Yeah.
how wide is that buffer?
I don't have that in front of me, but it's,
I think you're
Not
getting,
wide.
I think you're
Not
getting
wide
the
at the
horse
southern
before the
end.
cart. I mean, you're talking you guys are talking zoning, not land use. I'm sorry.
Well, I understand
But-
that, but it's step number 1. Step number 2 then becomes the zoning, and it's easier if step number 1 is done and you've allocated a land use.
I don't know, I looked at this
a
as a
mix-
map correction. That's,
So similar to the triangle with Mr. Weber's property, the zoning is staying in place. So we're just changing the land use. The RS10 zoning stays in place, and so does the industrial. If they come in with development plans, they will have to rezone unless we do it in an overall zoning change map. But they would have to come in and rezone, which you would be a part of that consideration of what they wanted to rezone to, depending on what their development is. And I think they had talked about in conceptual meetings that they wanted to do a mix of affordable apartments and single-family homes and the commercial area more along the east side. But they still have to come in and rezone to do any type of development. This is just the land use that they're putting in place.
Then how wide is that pink border we see?
Yeah, I would, maybe 150, 250 feet in depth, probably enough for a nice single-family home, Lakeview type of home. I don't see where you could get commercial or industrial up on that ridge. It's up, it's on the sand ridge. So I don't know if you could
I don't know how
get-
the rest of the commissioners feel, but to me, you know, there's too many undefined things here. It could be 5 feet wide or it could be 200 feet wide. And that's my biggest concern at this point. Understanding now what we're talking about, I just, at this point, just don't feel comfortable with something that could be and I know 5 foot's ridiculous when you're talking about that, but that's using an example. Could go as high as 200 feet around there, and I know it's a defensive move, giving them other possibilities, but you're still allowing industrial in there. And now you're opening up to commercial. And commercial is what? Something that could be open 9 o'clock at night with lights and, you see where I'm going with it?
Yeah, Mr. Roth, if I can interject, and I can definitely understand what you're concerned about. That's, as Doria said, you're talking about the zoning components at that point. You still have to create that mixed-use zoning those standards, including compatibility. You have the ability to put in those limitations, especially where we're adjacent to those existing residential neighborhoods, that you have additional protections. Now, in the case of Mr. Weber, you've got the exact same thing, being the ability to craft that zoning code with the development standards and, what's compatible with what, where's it adjacent to, and working directly from there. So, yeah, I mean, you're moving ahead to the zoning component without having a zoning district in place.
I just feel, and correct me if I'm wrong, we just take a border and draw it around there and say, that's it? And a mixed use on a plan map, we should have some definition as to how wide that strip is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand why. Why do you need to have a definition of the depth of this? When you change a land use, you change it along the property lines.
Okay, along the property line, but how wide do you want it to be?
Well, it'll be as wide as it needs in order to meet whatever zoning or development order it applies to. But the land use doesn't necessarily have to be a certain width. Am I correct, Kelly? No, it's supposed to just be the property, and is it the best use in that property? I don't see a conflict, only because it removes these more stringent and high intensity industrial uses that are allowed right now.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? Which are right adjacent
That's
to the single family. You hear what I'm saying? So you have high intensity industrial uses right next to single family right now. And if that's the desire of this commission, we can go back to what it is today. But I would think that we'd want to clean up some of that.
I would like to personally go after this issue in another time with more information.
Well, this evening, we were hoping to receive an approval of the draft proposed comp plan.
Right.
If you do not feel comfortable with this change, we can remove it.
This third one, I believe, I was under the impression we had 2 parcels originally, the airport and the triangle, and now this seems to have popped in, just saying, and I'm not at all comfortable.
Well, we can go back to the July 30th meeting and show you that it has been in this future land use map since then. The new one that was shown this evening, the only new one that was shown this evening is the airport parcel. That's it. That's the only one that popped up out of nowhere this evening. The other 2 have been there since the very beginning of time, so I'm a little confused. If you all do not feel comfortable, that's up to the commission, but I would ask that you would then pass the rest of it without that change.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. I'd like to go and review the minutes and go over what was said and stated at that time. I happen to know that parcel extraordinarily well, and if it was up for discussion, I would be on it. So I'm fine passing the parcel at the airport and the triangle for the change, but not this third parcel.
Okay. at this point, then we still need
What is
to...
what is the present land use right now?
He's a sand mine.
Industrial,
Industrial, land use industrial and zoning industrial.
that is correct,
them.
and then the other portion is low-density residential. So you have low-density residential adjacent to high-intensity industrial.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
that's how we're going to leave it to remain.
yeah.
Any further discussion on that? We still need to check if there, I don't think there's anyone else here, but on Zoom, if there's anyone else from the public that wants to comment. I don't know if we have anyone waiting, or maybe they've fallen asleep.
No one has raised their hands at this time. No one has raised their hand at this time.
Okay. So that takes care of both in person and on Zoom as far as public input or comment. So we'll close the public input section of the deliberations on the comprehensive plan. Does the city staff have any further comments on it?
Sir, the staff would recommends that the LPA recommend approval of the draft proposed City of Sebastian Comprehensive Plan 2040 and transmit the comprehensive plan to the City Council for consideration, including the recommendation to have the maps produced as a larger map series, addition of 5 of the NRB items as noted, policy 5-1.1.8, policy 5-1.3.1, objective 5-1.2, objective 5-1.5, and policy 5-2.4.1, the changes that were recommended by the Natural Resource Board. Recommend the addition of the future land use change at the airport from institutional to mixed use, and remove the future land use change from the sand mine parcel from mixed use back to single-family residential and industrial. That, I believe, summarizes our discussion this evening.
Okay, does the do the commissioners have any comments, questions of staff, or deliberation on the points mentioned?
I have no additional comments.
Okay, Mrs. Cottenberg?
Excuse me, no additional comments.
Mr. Quizzabosh?
No.
Anything else, Mr. Costino? So what we're basically looking at is approving as submitted with the points that were given to us by the Natural Resource Board. The only one that I had question on was the one about protecting air quality, adding the word meets or maintains, adding the word maintains on that.
Right now,
But
the
that
existing
was
language
something-
is exceeds. Right now, the existing language says exceeds, and it was recommended that we remove the word exceeds and put in maintains.
Okay, this draft didn't say it was striking anything out. I would agree with
apologize.
that.
Okay.
Yes. And you made no mention of the water conservation point that they made. Was that something,
That's just part of the DIA, which, you know, when we pass this on and recommend, we're really approving and recommending the policies and objectives. The data and analysis is there to support the policies and objectives, but it's really not something we vote on. So we'll, with your permission, go ahead and add that statement, but
what, the one down at the bottom under water conservation?
yes, sir.
The commissioners have any comments on that? I know we really didn't talk about that under water conservation. That's why that is a point we didn't discuss. You're looking at it, you're okay with it?
Yeah.
Okay. Any of the commissioners ready to... technically, I need to close the hearing on that, which we did. We're deliberating. I missed a check mark here, forgive me. So, we're ready for a motion if one of the commissioners would like to do so.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the comprehensive plan along with the future land use map proposed changes as noted, the exclusion of the one parcel. Sure, if I'm looking for a second here, or...
Or the exclusion of the one parcel, you were referencing...
This last parcel that's been left out. In other words, the zone changes, or land use changes, as discussed.
At the airport and the triangle?
And at the triangle.
Only?
Only.
Okay. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
And this, just to clarify, it's a recommendation of approval to City Council.
Recommendation to City Council,
Yes.
not approval.
So we're recommending to the City Council. So we have a motion by Mr. Cristino, a second by Mr. Simmons. Any questions before we vote?
I have a question.
Yes.
I think you didn't include the recommendations these recommendations in your motion? Don't we have to do that?
I'm
Yes.
looking for guidance.
It is.
So this is a little more complicated. Do you have those written down, or?
I believe you are agreeing with policy 5-1.1.8.
Let me withdraw that.
That's okay.
You can
don't need to
just say as
withdraw it.
recommended as read into the record by the staff. Because I had read each of those policies in to the record. Because you all did not want to include two of the policies.
Which
And so
two?
I read the ones that you wanted.
Which two are we leaving out here? Land use and transportation. Trying to read the writing.
Yes.
Leave this out.
Yes.
Anything else? Air quality?
And
Excuse me, Mr. Chair?
Sorry?
Mr. Chair, City Attorney? You guys need to have that open forum. You shouldn't be discussing over each other's shoulders.
Pardon?
You shouldn't be having that discussion between you two. You should be discussing in open forum. If you're deliberating, continue talking. You guys should not have a little sidebar you're having there.
Oh, it's really not a sidebar. Everyone has this sheet of paper. He's just got it marked what we've agreed on.
He couldn't find it.
I couldn't find, mine's put away.
Thanks for keeping us honest, though. Appreciate it.
Just make sure you clarify for the record what you guys are doing there. That way it's clear for the public.
Yeah, well, what we just did was go over the sheet from the Natural Resource Board.
Okay.
Not being able to make out some of Mr. Roth's penmanship. We had some questions.
Would you like me to restate, Mr. Cristino?
Okay.
Okay.
I'm getting lost here.
Policy 5-1.1.8.
All right, including policy 5-1, 5.1.8.
Right, policy 5.
Policy 5-1.3.1.
Correct.
Objective 5-1.2.
Correct. Then move on to the next objective.
Objective 5-1.5. I'm not
And then the
sure
last
here.
policy, sir.
Policy 5-2.4.1. Post-emergency assessments. I see one without a policy, addition of statement. I don't know if that's
That's just a
statement from
correct. That's
natural
just a
resource.
DIA,
Okay.
and you do not need to have that in the recommendation, sir.
All right, so I think that covers it. I
If you'd
believe.
like to modify, you're modifying your motion, sir?
Yes.
to include
To
that?
include the
Mr.
recommendations
Simmons,
from the
does that-
Natural Resource Board.
Does that
I was second.
agree with you? So you'll accept the modification to the motion?
Correct.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. The motion was amended, the second agreed to the amendment on the motion. Are there any questions at this point, or points of order? Hearing none, we're ready for a vote. Could we have a roll call on that, please?
Yes. Mr. Kizelbosch,
Yes.
Mr. Roth,
Yes.
Mr. Simmons,
Yes.
Ms. Cottenberg,
No.
Mr. Cristino.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1.
Thank you. So that will pass the comprehensive plan on to City Council with a recommendation to them for approval as we submitted it with the amendment and changes we received tonight. Okay, that basically closes the quasi-judicial public hearing and action on the comprehensive plan. Is there any other unfinished business you're aware of? Our agenda shows none, but I just want to double check. Okay. Any new business by the commissioners or staff? Any new business? Okay.
Oh, no, we're good. Thank you.
Commissioners' matters, we're in that area. Mr. Quiselbash, we'll go right down the road.
A question with the staff, what's going on with the project west of that library? What's going on? Nothing going on that one.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear, next to the library?
On 512,
Yes.
there's a project going on, the west side of the library. It's just dirt there and silt fence, nothing else.
That was a preliminary plat that came before you, a one-lot commercial subdivision. The preliminary plat came before you guys 5 years ago. It was a project, though, that involved Mr. Mosby. Mr. Mosby passed away, and so we had allowed a little time extension there. A new engineer came on board. He has been under construction for 3 years. We have taken the project before the Code Enforcement Board, Special Magistrate. He has a daily fine accruing until they get that subdivision and the final plat. We are working with them, trying to get that. They've had a meeting with us in the last couple of weeks. They do have potential buyers for the property, and they may want to split it again, so there may be a preliminary plat coming back before you, but we think at this point that will get the project done. Trust me, I have residents from Sebastian Lake that come to visit us and call us monthly just to try and get that project done. We've been trying diligently to get it finished. And I think in the meantime, the owner's trying to get it sold. But yes, that's what I can tell you. I don't know, we don't have any specific site plan or anything for it. Right now, it's just a one-lot commercial subdivision under construction, which is just the stormwater and grading.
Yeah, they have existing pipe, the culvert under the swale along, and that culvert has a big problem because it's just loose there, and whenever heavy rain is buckle up.
Yeah,
and
that
water
is
stop there.
it's a temporary dry entrance from, it's a right-of-way permit from Indian River County. It's expired, they've had him renew, but it's considered a temporary driveway cut into that property. It will not be the final pipe that's going into that road. In fact, actually, they are working with the county. It will be coming before you, hopefully before Christmas, but there is a library expansion site plan that we have in, and there's been some discussions about interconnecting the sites, but we are working through that project to get Dr. Brooks's project, his access off of 512. But it is a temporary pipe that will not be the permanent pipe for that drainage in that entrance.
Okay.
I have nothing to add.
Nothing? Ms. Kemper, nothing? Mr. Simmons?
I have no comments.
And I have nothing other than to just again compliment staff and Kelly and his fantastic team. This plan is really good. I'm just disappointed we ended up on a little bit of a downer at the end, but the plan is fantastic. I'm so excited about the fact that now there's some more documentation to show that we can focus efforts on the riverfront area. And I love your idea about, things like that come up. And this group here, I think, has added a lot of dimension to that with the plan and what it is. And it's open so that we can do things like that. And that's how plans get started, how new developments happen, is developers can see that it's a progressive plan. It really is. So my hat's off to you. Great job. Hours, I can't even begin to imagine. And I'm looking forward to it. I just hope that the city council approves. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't, but that's the extent of my comments for this evening. And city attorney's matters.
I have nothing for the good of the order other than that document that the sworn witness provided. Just make sure a copy of that gets to the clerk for the record. That's it.
The copy of?
I believe that gentleman provided the board something to review.
Oh, that Mr. Weber provided.
Yes, make sure that the clerk gets a copy of that for the record.
Okay.
That's all.
Yes.
That wasn't part of the initial record.
That's
and
correct.
guys assume you guys use that during your deliberation.
Yes. Okay. Perfect. You keep us on track. I appreciate that.
I appreciate all you guys and staff.
Staff matters.
I have none.
No, none. Thank you.
Great. Well, the meeting is adjourned.
Do nothing till you hear from me. Pay no